Hey guys, what's up? This is LJS here, and today I am back with another deck profile, and this time it's going to be on, finally, the Dragonic Overlord, the Cross. So yeah, this card has been out for quite some time in G set 1. But finally I have some time to do some deck profile, and before that, check out this awesome playmat I got. It's like a custom playmat, and it is, guess what? The Cross and the End Legion, which is really looks amazing and awesome. And this mat is actually bigger than normal mat, and it's a nice, awesome big G zone and all that stuff, which is great. So anyways, let's get to the deck profile, shall we? So for the starter, so first I'm gonna go through the deck list quickly for those of you who just want to see the list and who knows the skill. But for those of you who don't know the skill and want to see me explaining the skills as well as the reasons why I run certain cards, I'll get to that after I go to the deck list. So yeah, so right now, let's go to the deck list first. Starter, I run Red Pulse Draco Kit, which is the Grade 3 Searcher. Even though Grade 3 Searchers are generally not to say very good because they are 4k base and sometimes they can fail and they take one counter blast. But in this deck, it is quite useful because you want to run into the Cross as fast as possible. And the extra grade 3s that you search with him is also quite useful because both the Cross as well as the End are both Persona Blasters. So they both need extra copies of themselves to use their skills. And also, yeah, it adds pressure because once your opponent sees that you have drawn one of those two cards with his skill, they'll be like, oh my gosh, he has that card in hand. Extra pressure, which is good. It's all about psychological warfare, my friend. So next for grade 3s, you run for the Cross, the main star of this deck. He is really good, and with the mate, which is the End, he makes a huge pressure because for him, if he doesn't hit, something happens. For the End, if something hits, something happens. So either way, your opponent just loses out. So that's why it's a very good card, and he's your main boss of this deck. Next, you run 3 the Ends, because the End is your mate of the Cross, and even though he is like he's a Persona Blaster, you won't really get to use this skill that much because his cost is quite relatively heavy, and he's mainly there because of the pressure, and you can always search a copy of him out if you need a copy of him from the Legioning skill. So yeah, just run 3 is enough. And guess what? It's the End shall never fall. Oh yeah, because he restands. Next, we tag in for the grade 3 an extra 2 Dragonic Overlord the Great. So he's your other restanding Legion, and he's sort of like a backup, right? Because this deck build is fully Dragonic Overlords, because some of the cards I use in here require Dragonic Overlord Vanguard for it to work. So that's the alternate grade 3. Next we have grade 2s. So I run 4 of the Burning Horn Dragon. So he's your 12k beater for Dragonic Overlord. So if your Vanguard has an Overlord in his card name, he swings for 12k. So your beater is just as usual. Next I run 4 Dragonic Burnout. So he is the retirer. Basically he's there to retire opponent's rear guards. And since you have a lot of copies of Dragonic Overlords, and the thing is, all of these guys are Persona Blasters, so you definitely have copies of them in the drop zone. He provides a really cheap alternative to retire units, that's counter blast free, because you want to reserve a counter blast for both of their skills. And next, run 2 Dragonic Neoflames as the mate, purely because he's the mate of Dragonic Overlord the Great, because I don't really fancy his skill because he's one-off skill, but I guess it's a useful pressure card. And he's the mate of Dragonic Overlord the Great. So this deck has 3 forms of Dragonic Overlord: the End, the Great, and the X. So next, for the Great ones, we run 4 Perfect Guards, because Perfect Guards are always perfect good for Perfect Guards. So I run Protect Orb Dragon because I want to have the opportunity to unflip. But with Dragonic Overlord the X running around, it's always good to have the normal Perfect Guard that you can guard your rear guards with, because if you can't Perfect Guard your rear guards, he restands. Dragonic Overlord the End skill allows him to restand. So you have another Legion swinging at your face, so we don't really want that. Next, around 4 of Dragon Monk Gojo. He is very useful to help you search out for any copies of your grade 3. So what his skill is basically he's the make Laden Lien skill, so rest, drop and draw. So it allows you to help you filter through your decks quickly to search for things that you need. Next, I run 3 Dragon Monk Gyokuryu. So he is an interesting tech choice because I personally think he's a really good card because he gains a lot of power whenever something is retired. So if you retire one, he's an 11k booster. If you retire two, he's a 16k booster. I mean, and this deck retires a lot, so it's pretty easy to achieve his skill. And lastly, I run 3 Calamity Tower Wyvern. I may consider bumping him down to 2, but initially I ran 2, but I find that he doesn't. I didn't get him much because sometimes later in the game you actually want to write over your Legion D cross, because that way you have soul to fuel him to draw cards, or to fuel your Dragonic Burnout to retire units, because I think once your Counterblast sort of runs out, you want to be able to have enough soul for some of their skills to work. And for triggers, I run the usual 8 crits, 4 draw, which is the Gatling Claw Dragon, which is a staple draw to run, so which is Gatling Claw because of his skill, and 4 heals. And for the G zone, I run 2 Mahmoud, which is for early game pressure, 4 Root Flare for really cheap and good retirement, and 2 Utmost as a finisher. So now let's get to the skills, shall we? So first up, your grade 3 Shuster skill. For those of you who don't know, basically his skill is Counterblast 1 and put him in the soul. If you do, search your top 5 cards of your deck for a grade 3 and reveal the opponent, and yeah, basically he Counterblast 1 put in the soul and you get to search for a grade 3 from the top 5 cards of the deck. And even though statistically it has about, like, let's say 30% of success, but I think 30% success of getting any of these 2 in your hand just to show your opponent is pretty useful, because your opponent will be like, oh, he has those cards in hand, he can use their skill, all that pressure. So Dragonic Overlord the End in the past was also a very pressuring card, and now with the X it's even more pressuring. So yeah, so this deck is all about pressure and scaring your opponent. So next is Dragonic Overlord DX. So he's your main boss of this deck. It's a bit dark, let me try to improve. Yeah, there you go. So his skill is, first of all, when you Legion, you can search your deck for up to a card with the same name as a unit on your Vanguard circle. So basically, when he performs Legion with the End, you can search your deck for either a copy of him or a copy of the End. And both of them are Persona Blasters, and I'll get to the skill later. So his second skill is Counterblast 1 and discard the X from your hand. So discard a copy of him from your hand. When this unit attack does not hit, I don't know whether this unit attack. If it did not hit, you can pay the cost. If you do, choose 2 of your opponent's rear guard and retire them. So if he does not hit, your opponent loses 2 rear guards if you have him in your hand. And then guess what? Take note that this skill is not a Legion skill. So you can even use him without Legioning, and his skill will be an immense pressure, because if your opponent guards, they lose rear guards. If your opponent don't guard, they take damage. So he's a really pressuring card, and once he Legions, it's even more pressuring. So let's go to the Legion, the mate skill. So the mate is Dragonic Overlord the End. So his first skill is the Crossride skill. Okay, so his first main skill is the Old Lord skill. Basically, if you don't have a Kagero, he loses 2k, but no one cares about it. Next skill is the Crossride skill, but you don't run the original Overlord, Dragonic Overlord, so you can't use his Crossride skill, so it doesn't matter. His third skill is what is the important skill. Counterblast 2 and discard a copy of him from your hand. When this unit attack hits anything, okay, doesn't have to hit a Vanguard, you can hit a rear guard, you can pay the cost. If you do, restand this unit. So he is a restander for a relatively cheap price, Counterblast 2 and -1. So basically, when he attacks a rear guard or a Vanguard and attack hits, he can restand. And combine it with his Legion Master, you can see how powerful this Legion pair is. His skill, if it does not hit, your opponent loses 2 rear guards. His skill, if it hits, he restands. So this is a very huge, immense pressure to your opponent, and it makes your opponent think, should I guard it or should I let it hit? So normally what you do is you swing for a rear guard, and since nowadays people are running the Persona and Flipper, that perfect guard cannot be used to guard rear guards. So if you swing for their rear guard, and then they run Persona unflipping perfect guards, they will need to drop a lot of cards on the hand to guard it. If not, you can restand and they face another 20k attack, 22k attack to your Vanguard or rear guard. And if they guard this time, you can use his skill to retire 2 units. So this combo can essentially allow you to plus a lot if your opponent makes the wrong choices. But of course, if your opponent makes the right choices and guards properly, well, you still minus a lot and you still put a lot of pressure on him. So it's still a really good card. So the backup now is Dragonic Overlord the Great. So his skill is count +1 and choose 2 cards from your hand and discard it. At the end of the battle that this unit attack a rear guard, if this unit is Legion, you can pay the cost reduced and all your Vanguards. And this unit cannot be used for the rest of the turn, and you also cannot, even if you do not pay the cost, you cannot use it for the rest of the turn. So basically, the first instance that he attacked a rear guard, you must then use this cost, pay the cost to resend him. If you don't, you can't resend him anymore. Anyway, so yeah. So he is a restander as well, and he's your backup resending Vanguard to go into in case you can't ride the cross or the end. And his third skill is, basically when this unit attack hits, you can retire a rear guard with the same name on the Vanguard circle, which is either him or Dragon Newt, retire them, and you can choose your opponent's rear guard and retire it. So his on-hit skill is not really something you use because it's a wash. So you -1 and your opponent -1. It's not really exactly very worth it, unless of course you want to kill something that's really, unless you want to kill your opponent's rear guard that's really important, for example like Silent Tom and all that, then you can use it. But normally you don't really use his last skill. So yeah, he's just mainly there as a backup right and restander. Next is your Burning Horn Dragon. So basically if you have a Vanguard with Overlord in his card name, this unit gains 3k until end of battle. So basically when this unit attacks, so it's 12k swinger, which is good to make numbers. Next is Dragonic Burnout. So Dragonic Burnout is your sort of really cheap retire. So basically when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, if you have a Kage Vanguard, choose an Overlord card in its name. Choose a card with Overlord in its name from your drop zone. Put it at the bottom of your deck. If you do, Soul Blast 1 and choose an opponent's trigger and retire it. So take note, right? You don't Soul Blast first and then put the card back in the deck. You must put the card back into the deck first and then Soul Blast. This is to I guess they made it this way is to prevent you from Soul Blasting Overlord and then using the Overlord to put under the deck, because to use his skill, you must have an Overlord in your drop zone, not in your soul. So yeah, but the thing is, it's very easy to get Overlords in your soul, because either you have extra copies of Overlord the Great, and then you discard them for strike. There you go, you have it in your drop zone. Or you use one of their 2 skills to Persona Blast. There you go, you have another copy of Overlords in your deck, in your drop zone. And the thing is, since it goes into the bottom of the deck, it doesn't really affect your trigger count, unless of course you shuffle your deck. But yeah, so it's really useful because it's a really cheap retiring for the cost of Soul Blast 1. Although it does take a bit of setup to achieve, but early game, let's say you don't Legion and you manage to use his skill, go ahead, use his skill, and you have fuel for Dragonic Burnout. So next is Neo Flame. So Neo Flame is the mate of Dragonic Overlord the Great. So when this unit is placed on R, he gets a skill for that turn only. Basically, when your opponent's regard in the same column as this unit is killed, basically, let's say your opponent's regard here dies in the same column, you can count +1. If you do, choose another opponent's regard in the same column as that unit and retire it. So basically, this guy helps you kill a column. So let's say and the thing is, it says your opponent's regard is placed in a drop zone. It doesn't have to be retired by an effect, as long as you can have your Vanguard attack. You can have a Vanguard or rearguard attack a rearguard in front of him, and if he chooses to no guard it, you can use his skill count +1 and retire the booster as well. So he can be quite useful. So sometimes your opponent doesn't realize that his skills is available, and they just say, oh, no guard my rear guard, let you hit it. Then you realize, oh no, and then you use his skill and like, oh no, my whole column is gone. So yeah, he can be useful, but mainly I use him as a mate for the Great. So here's your personal unflipper. Basically, when this unit is placed on the Guardian Circle, if you have a copy of him in the drop zone, unflip a damage. So yeah, but he can only be used to perfect guard your Vanguard. So yeah, that's the cost you pay, I guess, for unflipping. Next is Gojo. So Gojo's skill is rest this unit, choose a card from your hand and discard it, and draw a card. So basically, you rest him, drop a card, drop out, and draw a card. Basically, it allows you to filter your hand for hopefully better cards from the deck. Next is the Dragon Monk Gyokuryu. So his skill is pretty good. Generation Break 1. Take note though, this is a Generation Break 1 card, so you can't use his skill early game. You can only use it after you strike. When your opponent's rear guard is put in the drop zone, due to an effect from one of your cards, basically it is retired from your card effect, not killed by an attack. He gains 5k until end of turn. Yep, you read that right, it's 5k. He gains 5k until end of turn. So if you retire 2 units, he gains 10k, which is he's an 11k booster. If you retire 3 units this turn, he is a 21k booster. Or attacker, doesn't matter. Okay, he can give me booster or attacker. So he's a very powerful, useful card that can really work well because, for example, if you use the cross skill, you retire 2 units. He gains 10k. If you use Dragonic Burnout skill, that's retiring 1 unit. He gains 5k. If you use both the skills together, he gains 15k, which is amazing. Next, you have your Calamity Tower Wyvern, which is quite a staple card nowadays in decks. Especially when you call him out, Soul Blast 2, draw a card. Simple as that. Helps you free your soul, helps you set up your drop zone early game, as well as if you ride over your Legion the Cross, you can Soul Blast those 2 out and use it as fuel for Dragonic Burnout in the future. Next, you have Getting Claw Dragon. Basically, counterblast 1 and put it into your soul. If you have a Kagero Vanguard, choose one of your opponent's rearguard and retire it. Choose one of your opponent's grade 0 or less rearguard, retire it. So he is there, run for him because he's very useful, because he's there to remove pesky starters. Yep, grade 0s or whatever. So next for the G units, Mahmoud. So Mahmoud's skill is, when this unit attack hits a Vanguard, you choose one of your opponent's rearguard and retire it. So he's an early game stride. So let's just say you couldn't Legion in time, you couldn't Legion early game, strike into him. And he is a pressure card because if it hits, you can retire an opponent's card. And once you do that, his skill is live. He gains 5k as well if he hits, which is good as well. So 11k booster. Next is your main wonderful, amazing retiring G unit. He is a really good card. So basically, his skill is choose a copy of him and flip it face up. So basically, you flip him face up in your G zone, and then if you do, choose one of your opponent's rear guard and retire all of your opponent's rear guard in the same column as that unit. So you can only use it once a turn. So basically, his skill allows you to retire a whole column for essentially free. So but you can only use his skill twice because you can only run maximum of 4 copies of him. So that's why I run 4, because I want to use his skill on maximize the usage of his skill, because he's cheap. It's counterblast free. You don't even have to use counterblast at all. You retire 2 units, and if you do it, he gains 10k. Oh yeah, although do note that you need to have another unit on your face up in your G zone. So basically, his skill is when you flip 1 unit face up, and if you have 2 or more units in your G zone face up, then only you can retire. So do not strike him first. Strike something else first. So first thing you do is probably strike him, or utmost if you want to. Then only in your second or more stride, use him. Only then his skill is available to use. Lastly, it's Utmost. So Utmost is your power beater in case your opponent still survives. Use him as a finisher because when he attacks, you count +1 and he gains 10k. So your Vanguard swings for 36k by itself. Boosted is 43 or so. So yeah, so this is a very powerful deck. That's why it's no surprise in Japan it is a top tier deck. It has been winning tournaments everywhere. Even in Japan, they restricted the Cross and Calamity Tower because this deck is so good. So yeah, so this has been my deck profile on the Cross. Hope you guys like it. If you do, thumbs up. If you like my content, do subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been LJS, and I'll see you guys next time.